Segregation, the policy or practice of separating people of different races, classes, or ethnic groups, as in schools, housing, and public or commercial facilities, especially as a form of discrimination. In the early 1800s, African Americans were treated unequally. They were sold to white owners as slaves, where they were forced to work under harsh conditions. After the Civil War ended in 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment, which freed all slaves throughout the United States. Unfortunately, there was still a lot of white people who believed that blacks and whites should not be treated equally. After the 14th Amendment passed and gave citizenship to all blacks born in the United States, many whites were furious and determined to keep the black community as having the same rights as them. Many white people started to form their own groups, later known as the Ku Klux Klan. These groups worked on making the lives of many black families miserable. They would set their churches on fire, and sometimes they shot them on the spot. The Ku Klux Klan was a major threat to the black community. In the case of Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896, the Supreme Court decided that it would not contradict our Constitution if blacks were separated but still remain equally. That is when the Jim Crow laws were passed. The Jim Crow laws prohibited blacks and whites from being in an area together, also known as segregation. Many public areas were being segregated. Blacks and whites are to have their own public bathrooms, water fountains, movie theaters, and even schools. Many blacks decided it was best not to argue about it because they were afraid they'd be harassed, fired from their jobs, or killed. There were many white people, though, who were against segregation and supported the black community in fighting for their rights. Organizations like the National Association of Advancement of Colored People and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference fought for the rights of black Americans by protesting. They were able to accomplish integrating buses and waiting rooms. They weren't able to integrate public schools, though. This affected black students because they were not able to get the same educational opportunities as the whites had. The Board of Education decided to take action. They created a plan known as the Blossom Plan that has 3 stages to it. The stages involved integrating all public schools step by step. Since the plan wouldn't start till 3 years later, though, many civil rights activists didn't agree this plan would work. One of the activists was Daisy Bates, an owner of the newspaper intended for blacks and president of the Arkansas National Association of Advancement of Colored People. Daisy Bates decided to create a plan of her own to abolish segregation. She worked with the NAACP to help black students get into white schools. She worked on helping 33 black students in going to an all-white school, but the school board did not accept their entrance. She was able to convince some parents to agree on their kids going to Central High School, even though the school board insisted they stay at an all-black high school. Superintendent Blossom chose the students who were interested in going to Central High School by picking the ones with good grades and a great personality. He chose 32 students, but after explaining the issue with their parents, all but 9 students decided to backfire. In the end, it was 9 students who agreed to go to Central High. From the 9, only one was a senior, Ernest Green, who was determined to expand his opportunities. 6 of them were juniors, including Minnie Gian Brown, who was confident she'd fit in with the people from Central High, Elizabeth Eckford, who was a quiet but a strong girl, Thelma Mothershed, whose parents had tried to convince her to not go to Central High due to her serious heart condition, Melba Batillo, Gloria Gray, Terrence Roberts. The other 2 were sophomores, Jefferson Thomas, who was a track athlete at his previous school, and Carlotta Walls, the youngest of Little Rock 9, who had already been living in an integrated neighborhood. The day before the Little Rock 9 went to school, Daisy Bates made a phone call to the 9 students to tell them to meet her at her house. She was able to contact all the students except for Elizabeth Eckford because she had no phone. In the meeting Daisy had with all the 8 students, she prepared them for what to expect in the first day of school and how to handle it calmly. On the other hand, Elizabeth Eckford walked to school by herself without imagining what was ahead of her. A large group of angry white people were standing outside of the school, waiting for her and the other 9 to arrive. Elizabeth tried to find a way in, but she was turned away by the Arkansas National Guards. She was left with no choice but to return home. As she walked away, the angry mob followed her, calling her nasty names. She searched for anyone who seemed nice enough to help her. She saw an old lady who she thought would be kind enough, but when Elizabeth approached her, the old lady spit in her face. Even though she was being insulted, Elizabeth remained her head held high and didn't look back on her aggressors. Later on, the other 8 students tried to enter Central High, but were also turned away by the guards. After being turned away, the students went to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office to complain how they weren't allowed to enter the school. Weeks later, Daisy Bates was informed that the governor would remove the National Guards. On September 23rd, the police took the 9 students to school and let them in safely. But outside, the angry mob was out of control, and the 9 students were again removed from the school for their own safety. The governor of Kansas notified the president over what had happened. On September 25th, he sent the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division to make sure the 9 students got to school safely. This was the first full day at school at Central High for the 9 students. Throughout the school year, the 9 students had to deal with torment and insults from the white students. Minijia Brown was the first to be suspended after throwing a bowl of chili at 2 white students that had been insulting her. A few days later, she had confronted a white student who had been insulting her. This led her to getting expelled from Central High. On the other hand, one of the students was celebrating his biggest achievement. Ernest Green was the first black student to graduate from Central High School on May 25, 1958. Along with his family, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King also attended Ernest's graduation ceremony. Although it has seemed there was going to be big changes in segregated schools, there was still a lot of confusion over the decision of integrating Central High. The next year, Little Rock high schools were forced to close to avoid desegregation. But the following year, the schools reopened. Only 2 of the Little Rock 9 went back to Central High, Jefferson Thomas and Carlotta Walls, who both graduated from Central High School in 1960. The remaining 6 of Little Rock 9 graduated from different schools. All of the 9 students went to college after high school to pursue their dreams. Today, they are remembered as being courageous and brave. The event of Little Rock 9 proved to the nation that African Americans were able to stand up for their rights and achieve their equality. It also inspired others to also fight for their rights and take risks.